Somewhere in a boardroom, in the days before the largest IPO in history, a small group of investors were reportedly shown something that was never supposed to leave the room: a device, thinner than an iPhone, running an operating system nobody outside that room had ever seen, and built by a company that, until now, was known for rockets, not phones. That company is SpaceX. And the man at the center of it, Elon Musk, has spent the last week doing everything in his power to convince the world it doesn't exist. Here's why this matters to you, even if you've never owned a share of Apple or SpaceX stock in your life. Nearly every person watching this video is carrying a device in their pocket right now that runs on one of exactly two operating systems. For almost 2 decades, that duopoly has never been seriously threatened. What we're about to walk you through is a report, a denial, a stock swing worth tens of billions of dollars, and a set of business moves that, taken together, suggest the foundation for a real challenge to that duopoly may already be under construction. Whether a phone ever reaches your hands is genuinely uncertain. What is not uncertain is that the pieces for one already exist. Let's break down exactly what's confirmed, what's denied, and what it could mean for the device in your pocket. On July 1st, 2026, the Wall Street Journal published a report citing people familiar with the matter, claiming that SpaceX had privately shown a prototype handset to investors ahead of its initial public offering. According to the journal's sourcing, the device was described as slimmer than a current iPhone, running its own proprietary operating system rather than Android or Apple's iOS, powered by a Qualcomm Snapdragon chip, and deeply integrated with Grok, the artificial intelligence system built by xAI, the company Musk folded into SpaceX earlier this year. Critically, the sourcing behind the report also indicated the project was described internally as being at a very early stage, with the design still changing and no commercial commitment made to actually build or sell it. Within hours, Elon Musk responded directly on X, calling the report utterly false. That post was later reported to have been deleted. The market did not wait for clarity. SpaceX shares, which trade on the Nasdaq under the ticker SPCX, fell as much as 7.9% that day, briefly erasing more than $50 billion from Musk's personal net worth on paper. At the same time, Qualcomm shares climbed as much as 3.4% as traders priced in the possibility of a major new chip customer, and Apple shares rose 1.7%, a move that on its face suggests investors initially read this as good news for Apple, or at least not an immediate threat. To understand why this story landed the way it did, it helps to walk through the sequence. In February of 2026, Reuters reported that SpaceX was considering a mobile device connected to its Starlink satellite network. Musk responded at the time by stating plainly, "We are not developing a phone." He did leave the door open slightly, saying a Starlink-connected device was not ruled out at some point in the future, but that it would look very different from a conventional smartphone. That same month, February 2026, SpaceX completed its absorption of xAI, bringing Grok, the social platform X, and the coding tool Cursor under one corporate roof alongside SpaceX's satellite and rocket businesses. In May 2026, the Federal Communications Commission approved SpaceX's acquisition of 65 megahertz of exclusive nationwide mid-band spectrum from EchoStar, in a deal reported to be worth $17 billion. That spectrum is widely viewed as the regulatory foundation a company would need to operate its own cellular network, separate from Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile. On June 16, 2026, SpaceX completed its initial public offering. Multiple outlets described it as the largest IPO in history, with the company raising approximately $75 billion at a valuation near $1.8 trillion. Shares briefly touched $225.64 before settling considerably lower in the weeks that followed. On June 26th, according to reporting picked up from the Financial Times, SpaceX Chief Operating Officer Gwynne Shotwell told investors during the IPO roadshow that the company was exploring a Starlink-branded mobile wireless service, and that SpaceX might build its own terrestrial cellular network. Bloomberg separately reported that SpaceX has held talks with Charter Communications about a mobile infrastructure partnership. Then, on July 1st, the Wall Street Journal's report landed, followed within hours by Musk's denial. And today, July 7th, 2026, SpaceX is set to join the NASDAQ 100 index, a move expected to trigger significant buying from index funds that are required to hold the stock once it's added. To understand why this rumor has staying power despite Musk's denial, you need to understand what SpaceX has quietly assembled over the past year. Through Starlink, the company already operates one of the largest satellite internet constellations on Earth, with direct-to-cell technology already active in partnership with T-Mobile. Through its acquisition of xAI, it now owns Grok, a large language model competing directly with the AI systems built by OpenAI and Google. Through X, it owns a social media platform with hundreds of millions of users. And through the FCC Spectrum deal, it has secured the legal groundwork for its own nationwide wireless network. Individually, none of these is new information. Together, they describe something closer to a full technology stack: a network layer through Starlink, an intelligence layer through Grok, a social layer through X, and now, according to the disputed report, potentially a hardware and operating system layer to tie it together. Musk's own public comments over the past year add further context. At an event in Pennsylvania last year, he said the idea of building a phone makes me want to die, but added that if the company ever had to do it, it would. He has also spoken publicly about wanting to build an everything app, modeled on Chinese platforms like WeChat, that combine messaging, payments, and services in a single application. There is also a clear commercial motive behind the speculation. Musk has been openly critical of Apple's control over its App Store, including the roughly 30% commission Apple charges on many app transactions, and has raised concerns about the risk that Apple could remove X from the App Store entirely. A proprietary device and operating system would allow SpaceX to bypass that gatekeeper role completely. Let's be precise about who has said what. Elon Musk's only public comment on the specific WSJ report was posted to X on July 1st, where he called the story utterly false. He did not provide additional detail beyond that denial, and the post was later reported to have been removed from the platform. According to the Wall Street Journal's own reporting, SpaceX itself, through the people familiar with the matter cited in the story, indicated that the project described was in a very early stage, that the design was still subject to change, and that no decision had been made to move toward commercial production. Neither Apple nor Qualcomm has issued a public statement specifically addressing the SpaceX report. Qualcomm's stock movement reflects investor speculation about a potential chip partnership, not any confirmed statement from the company. Here is what can be stated with confidence based on reporting from the Wall Street Journal, Reuters, Bloomberg, and the Financial Times, along with regulatory filings and market data. It is confirmed that the Wall Street Journal published a report on July 1st describing a prototype AI handset shown to SpaceX investors. It is confirmed that Musk publicly denied the report the same day. It is confirmed that SpaceX shares fell sharply following the denial, while Qualcomm shares rose. It is confirmed that the FCC approved SpaceX's spectrum acquisition from EchoStar in May 2026. It is confirmed that SpaceX absorbed xAI in February 2026. It is confirmed that SpaceX completed its IPO in June 2026 at a scale described as the largest in history. And it is confirmed that SpaceX's chief operating officer told investors the company was exploring a Starlink-branded mobile service. What remains unconfirmed is whether an actual handset prototype exists in the form described by the journal's sources. There is no public product image, no supply chain documentation, and no regulatory filing describing a consumer device. This remains, at this stage, a disputed and unverified claim. Financial analysts have offered a mixed but cautious read on the situation. Analysts at Vital Knowledge, a market research firm, noted that SpaceX would face significant hurdles in manufacturing a consumer device at the scale needed to seriously compete with established smartphone makers, and that launching rockets and manufacturing consumer electronics are fundamentally different businesses. That caution is grounded in recent history. Other attempts to build standalone AI-first hardware devices have struggled. The Humane AI Pin, a wearable AI assistant, was discontinued after weak sales. The Rabbit R1, a similar AI device, launched to widespread critical disappointment. Analysts point to these examples as evidence that consumers remain deeply attached to their existing smartphones, and that AI features alone have not historically been enough to convince people to adopt new hardware. At the same time, several analysts note that Apple's own financial position depends heavily on its services segment, which includes App Store fees and reached approximately $26.6 billion in the most recent quarter. That segment carries Apple's highest profit margins and is viewed by some analysts as a key reason the stock trades at a price-to-earnings ratio near 36. Any credible long-term threat to that revenue stream, even one that takes years to materialize, is something markets are likely to watch closely. For American consumers, the immediate impact of this story is minimal. There is no product to buy, no release date, and no confirmed specifications, but the broader competitive landscape is worth watching. If SpaceX's Spectrum holdings, its Starlink network, and its charter communications discussions eventually produce a functioning wireless carrier, that alone would represent new competition for AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile, regardless of whether a SpaceX-branded phone ever exists. For investors, the episode has already had real financial consequences. Billions of dollars in market value moved across SpaceX, Qualcomm, and Apple stock within a single trading day, based entirely on a report and a denial, without a single confirmed fact about an actual product. Globally, the story adds to a broader conversation about the increasing concentration of technology, communications infrastructure, and artificial intelligence within a small number of companies and individuals. SpaceX now controls a major satellite network, a leading AI model, and a global social media platform. Whether or not a phone ever emerges from that combination, the underlying infrastructure it controls is already significant. Looking ahead, there are several developments worth watching closely. Apple is scheduled to report its fiscal third quarter earnings on July 30th, 2026, which will be the first major corporate update from the company since this rumor broke. Some reports suggest Chief Executive Tim Cook may not personally attend the earnings call, though this detail has not been officially confirmed by Apple. Apple's most recent quarter showed revenue of approximately $111.2 billion and earnings per share of $2.01, beating analyst expectations for an eighth consecutive quarter alongside a new $100 billion stock buyback authorization. Prediction markets, as of this report, assign only a 28% probability that Apple releases an entirely new product line before 2027, suggesting most investors do not currently expect a direct near-term response. SpaceX's addition to the NASDAQ 100 index today, July 7th, is expected to trigger new buying from index funds, which could add volatility to the stock independent of this phone story. And any further developments on SpaceX's Spectrum use, its talks with Charter Communications, or new reporting on the alleged prototype would be the clearest indicators of whether this moves from rumor toward reality. Let's be clear about where things stand. What is confirmed is that a major news organization reported a detailed account of a prototype device shown to investors, that Musk has denied it in the strongest possible terms, and that the underlying pieces, satellite connectivity, wireless spectrum, an in-house AI model, and a global social platform are all real and already in place. What remains unconfirmed and should be treated as such is whether an actual consumer phone is being built, what it would look like, or whether it will ever reach the market. For now, the safest conclusion is the one several analysts have already reached. Treat this as a disputed report, not a confirmed product, and watch how SpaceX's other business moves, its wireless ambitions, its spectrum use, and its earnings develop in the months ahead. If a device does eventually emerge, the infrastructure to support it is already largely in place. If it doesn't, the story becomes a case study in how quickly markets react to a headline, even one that its subject has already denied. We'll continue to follow this story and bring you verified updates as they develop.